Uncover Poirot's Secrets, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot reveals thrilling mysteries. In the shadowed halls of Ravenwood Hall, a gunshot pierces the stormy night and Major Ernest Whitlock lies dead. Suicide or something far darker? Why does a locked door hide a trail of dry mud? Who smoked the Turkish cigarette that doesn't belong? And what secrets lurk in the hearts of a widow, a fiery heiress, and a nervous doctor? Enter Hercule Poirot, whose little gray cells unravel a web of greed, betrayal, and hidden motives. Can you guess the killer before the final shocking twist? Dive into this classic Agatha Christie mystery, where every clue counts and no one is what they seem. Chapter 1. The Gathering at Ravenwood Hall. The wind howled across the Devon moors, a mournful wail that shook the ancient leaded windows of Ravenwood Hall. Captain Arthur Hastings stepped from the motor car, pulling his scarf tighter against the biting chill. The manor loomed before him, its weathered stone facade half cloaked in ivy, a relic of grandeur now tinged with decay. Sir Henry Ashbourne, a retired diplomat and old acquaintance, had invited Hastings for a weekend retreat, promising lively company and fine claret. Yet as Hastings crossed the threshold, a prickle of unease stirred within him, as if the house itself whispered of secrets. The drawing-room glowed with the warmth of a crackling fire, casting shadows that danced across faded tapestries. Sir Henry greeted his guests with a hearty laugh, his walrus mustache quivering. A robust man in his 60s, he exuded the forced cheer of one accustomed to diplomatic facades. His wife, Lady Margaret, glided about in a shimmer of emerald silk, her smile tight, her eyes darting as if seeking an escape. Their daughter, Clara, aged 25, stood by the mantel, her auburn hair catching the firelight. Her beauty was sharp, almost predatory, and her gaze swept the room with cool calculation. Dr. Philip Grayson, the local physician, hovered near the decanter, his thin fingers twitching as he poured brandy. His nervous tick, a slight jerk of the head, betrayed a man ill at ease. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, a widowed novelist known for her lurid tales, sat poised in an armchair, her dark eyes drinking in every gesture, as if storing material for her next book. Major Ernest Whitlock, a barrel-chested man with a booming voice, regaled the group with tales of his time in India, though his anecdotes felt rehearsed. His young wife, Violet, barely 20, seemed detached, her delicate hands twisting a pearl necklace as her eyes flitted to the door. Mr. Leonard Baxter, Sir Henry's solicitor, occupied a corner, his gaunt face impassive, his ledger-like mind noting every word spoken. Dinner was announced at 7 and the party moved to the dining room where crystal gleamed under a chandelier heavy with dust. The meal, roast pheasant and claret, was exquisite, but the conversation faltered. Clara's sharp retort to her mother's inquiry about her London season drew a strained silence. "Really, Mother, must we discuss my prospects like cattle at market?" she said, her tone slicing through the politeness. Lady Margaret flushed, her fork clattering. Major Whitlock's loud laugh at his own jest grated on Dr. Grayson, who spilled his wine, muttering an apology. Violet barely touched her food, her gaze fixed on some distant point. Hastings, ever the observer, noted these tensions, sensing a web of unspoken grudges beneath the civility. By 9, the storm outside had worsened, rattling the windows with fierce gusts. Sir Henry suggested an early retirement, citing the weather. "We'll have plenty of time for cards and chatter tomorrow," he said, though his joviality rang hollow. The guests dispersed to their rooms, footsteps echoing in the cavernous halls. Hastings, however, could not sleep. He lay in his four-poster bed, the wind's howl mingling with an unshakable sense of foreboding. Ravenwood Hall, for all its elegance, felt like a stage set for a tragedy yet to unfold. Chapter 2. The Shot in the Night. The stillness of Ravenwood Hall was shattered by a sharp, unmistakable crack, a gunshot. Captain Arthur Hastings bolted upright in his bed, his heart hammering against his ribs. The sound had come from somewhere within the manor, its echo swallowed by the storm raging outside. Fumbling for his dressing gown, he lit a candle and stepped into the corridor, where shadows flickered like specters in the dim light. Doors creaked open along the hallway and hushed voices mingled with the wind's wail. Sir Henry Ashbourne, disheveled in a nightshirt, emerged first, his face flushed with alarm. "What the devil was that?" he barked, leading the way toward the source of the noise. Lady Margaret followed, clutching a shawl, her eyes wide with fear. Clara, her auburn hair loose, appeared composed but pale, while Dr. Grayson's nervous tic was more pronounced, his hands trembling as he gripped a lamp. Mrs. Carver, her novelist's curiosity evident, trailed behind, murmuring observations to herself. Violet Whitlock, her face ghostly in the candlelight, clung to the banister, and Mr. Baxter, ever precise, brought up the rear, his expression unreadable. The group converged on the library, its heavy oak door ajar. Sir Henry pushed it open, revealing a grim tableau. Major Ernest Whitlock lay sprawled across the Persian rug, his once vibrant frame lifeless. A revolver rested beside his outstretched hand, its barrel glinting dully. Blood pooled beneath his temple, staining the intricate patterns of the rug, and his eyes stared vacantly at the chandelier above. Lady Margaret let out a stifled scream, clutching Clara, who stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the body. Dr. Grayson, with a physician's instinct, knelt beside the major, his fingers probing for a pulse. "He's gone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Shot through the head." "It's suicide," Mr. Baxter declared, pointing to the revolver. "The door was locked from the inside. See the key in the lock?" He gestured to the door, where a brass key gleamed in the moonlight streaming through the open window. The curtains billowed wildly, rain spattering the sill. Hastings, his mind sharpened by years at Poirot's side, frowned. The scene felt too neat, too deliberate. He noted the revolver's precise placement, as if arranged for display. His eyes caught a faint smudge of mud on the windowsill, dry despite the ongoing storm. A half-burned cigarette lay in an ashtray on the desk, its acrid scent lingering. The library's air was thick with the coppery tang of blood and something else. Tension, perhaps, or deceit. By dawn, the local constable, Inspector Japp, arrived, his mustache bristling with authority as he surveyed the scene. "Suicide plain as day," he said, echoing Baxter's assessment. "Man shoots himself, locks the door, end of story." Yet his confidence wavered under Hastings' skeptical gaze. "Still," Japp added, "we'll need an expert to confirm. I'll send for Hercule Poirot. He's got a nose for this sort of thing." Hastings nodded, relieved. The library, with its locked door and staged corpse, held secrets that only Poirot's little gray cells could unravel. As the household dispersed, whispering and casting furtive glances, Hastings lingered, his eyes returning to the mud on the sill. Something about it nagged at him, a detail out of place in the perfect tragedy of Ravenwood Hall. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The train from London pulled into Ravenwood Station with a weary hiss, and Hercule Poirot alighted, his patent leather shoes gleaming despite the muddy platform. His diminutive figure, clad in a perfectly tailored overcoat, exuded an air of fastidious elegance. His mustache, waxed to precise points, quivered slightly as he inhaled the damp Devon air. Captain Arthur Hastings, waiting anxiously, felt a surge of relief at the sight of his friend. Poirot's sharp green eyes met his, twinkling with curiosity and a hint of amusement. "Mon ami Hastings," Poirot said, adjusting his hat with a delicate touch. "A suicide in a locked room, you say? Non, this is not so simple. The little gray cells, they are already stirring. Tell me all, if you please." As they drove to Ravenwood Hall, Hastings recounted the events. The gunshot at 2:17 a.m. Major Whitlock's body in the library, the locked door, the revolver, and the smudge of mud on the windowsill. Poirot listened, his head tilted, interrupting only to clarify a detail. The brand of the cigarette, the state of the curtains, the demeanor of the guests. Curieux, he murmured, his fingers drumming lightly on his cane. Upon arriving at the manor, Poirot insisted on seeing the library at once. The room remained as it was, save for the body, now removed to the local morgue. Poirot moved with methodical grace, his eyes darting from the blood-stained rug to the open window. He knelt by the sill, examining the dry mud with a magnifying glass. "This mud," he said softly, "it is not from last night's storm. It is older, baked by the sun of yesterday." He rose, brushing his gloves, and turned to the desk where the half-burned cigarette still sat in its ashtray. Sniffing it, he frowned. Turkish, most unusual. The Major, he smoked Virginia tobacco, n'est-ce pas? Hastings nodded, impressed by Poirot's recall. Poirot's attention shifted to a splintered chair near the desk, where he plucked a tiny thread of blue silk caught in the wood. "This," he said, pocketing it, "is a clue that speaks." He requested a map of the house and grounds, which Mr. Baxter, the solicitor, provided with a curt nod. Poirot studied it, tracing the library's position relative to the garden and the trellis outside the window. "The setting, it is a stage," he remarked to Hastings, "and every actor in this drama has a role to play." Inspector Japp, bustling in, greeted Poirot with a mix of respect and exasperation. "Locked room, gun by the body. Looks like suicide to me, Poirot, but you'll poke holes in it, I wager." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "The truth, Inspector, is like a puzzle. The pieces are here, but they are not yet in order." He glanced at the assembled household now gathered in the hall, their faces a gallery of unease. "Let us begin," he said, "with the observation of the human heart." As Poirot prepared to question the guests, Hastings marveled at his friend's calm authority. The library, with its lingering scent of blood and tobacco, held secrets that Poirot's meticulous mind would surely unravel. The storm outside had passed, but within Ravenwood Hall a darker tempest was brewing. Chapter 4. The interrogations begin. The drawing-room of Ravenwood Hall, with its heavy velvet curtains and flickering fire, became Hercule Poirot's stage. He sat in a high-backed chair, his posture impeccable, his hands folded neatly over his cane. The guests, summoned at his request, arranged themselves uneasily on sofas and armchairs, their faces betraying a mix of curiosity and dread. Captain Hastings stood by the fireplace, watching his friend's methodical mind at work. Poirot's green eyes, sharp as a falcon's, moved from one face to another, as if reading the secrets etched in their expressions. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice soft yet commanding. "A man is dead, and the truth it hides among you. I, Hercule Poirot, will find it. Let us proceed with order and method." He requested each person account for their whereabouts at 2:17 a.m., the moment of the fatal shot. Sir Henry Ashbourne spoke first, his voice gruff. "I was asleep in my room, as was my wife. The storm kept us up earlier, but by 2 we were sound asleep." Lady Margaret nodded, her hands clasped tightly. "I heard nothing until the shot woke us," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Poirot's eyes lingered on her, noting the faint quiver in her fingers. Clara Ashbourne, seated with her legs crossed, met Poirot's gaze defiantly. "I was in my room, reading. Alone. I heard the shot and came downstairs with the others." Her tone was cool, but Hastings noticed her fingers tighten on the armrest. Poirot tilted his head. "And what, mademoiselle, were you reading?" Clara hesitated, then named a novel, a romance ill-suited to her sharp demeanor. Poirot merely nodded, his expression unreadable. "Dr. Philip Grayson." His tic, more pronounced under scrutiny, admitted to restlessness. "I couldn't sleep," he said, wiping his brow. "I was pacing the upper corridor, but I saw nothing unusual until the shot." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You were near the library, Doctor, yet you heard no footsteps, no voices?" Grayson shook his head. Too quickly, Hastings thought. Mrs. Evelyn Carver, the novelist, leaned forward, her voice theatrical. "I was in my room writing. The storm inspired me, you see. I heard the shot and joined the others." Poirot smiled faintly. "A writer's ear, it is keen, no? Yet you heard nothing before the shot?" Mrs. Carver faltered, then shook her head. Violet Whitlock, pale and tearful, clutched a handkerchief. "I was in my bedroom asleep until the shot woke me. Ernest, Major Whitlock, wasn't with me. He often stayed up late in the library." Her voice broke and Poirot's tone softened. "Madame, did your husband smoke Turkish cigarettes?" Violet blinked, startled. "No, he preferred Virginia tobacco." Poirot pointed to the ashtray retrieved from the library. "And yet a Turkish cigarette was found. Most curious." Finally, Mr. Leonard Baxter, the solicitor, spoke with measured precision. "I was in my study reviewing documents. I heard the shot and came at once." His eyes met Poirot's without flinching, but Hastings noted the man's rigid posture as if braced for an attack. Poirot rose, pacing slowly. "One detail, it troubles me. Mademoiselle Clara, your blue silk scarf, worn so elegantly at dinner, it is missing a thread." He produced the tiny blue strand from his pocket, holding it to the light. Clara's lips parted, but she recovered quickly. "I lost that scarf yesterday," she said. "It must have caught somewhere." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mademoiselle. The little gray cells, they will decide." As the group dispersed, Hastings marveled at Poirot's ability to unsettle with a single question. The air in Ravenwood Hall grew heavier, as if the walls themselves sensed the net tightening. Poirot, however, seemed invigorated, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. "The truth, mon ami," he whispered to Hastings, "it is like a shadow. We see its shape, but not yet its source." Chapter 5. The Obvious Suspect. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Ravenwood Hall, its golden rays doing little to dispel the chill that had settled over the household. Inspector Japp, pacing the drawing room with the restless energy of a bloodhound, had fixed his suspicions on Violet Whitlock. "It's as clear as day, Hastings," he declared, his mustache twitching with conviction. "She's the wife, motives written all over her. A young thing like that, married to an older man with a temper? I'd wager there's an affair, or money, or both." He produced a document, obtained from Mr. Baxter, revealing that Major Whitlock's will left his entire estate, rumored to be substantial, to Violet. Whispers among the staff, Japp added, hinted at her flirtations with Dr. Philip Grayson. Captain Hastings, standing by the window, frowned. The theory was tidy, but it lacked the nuance he had come to expect from Poirot's investigations. "Japp, don't you think it's a bit too convenient? The revolver right there, the locked door. It feels staged." Japp waved a hand dismissively. "You've been around Poirot too long, old chap. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar." Hercule Poirot, seated at a small writing desk, looked up from his notes, his green eyes glinting with quiet amusement. "The cigar, Inspector, may indeed be a cigar, but its smoke it can obscure the truth. Why would Madame Whitlock, if guilty, leave the revolver so neatly by her husband's hand? It is, how you say, too perfect." He tapped his pencil against the desk, his mind clearly turning over details Hastings could only guess at. Poirot had requested the revolver be brought to him, and he examined it closely, noting its serial number etched faintly on the barrel. With a nod to Japp, he revealed a startling fact. The weapon matched one reported stolen from a London gentleman's club a year prior. "This revolver," Poirot said, It has traveled far to find its place in this tragedy. We must ask how it came to Ravenwood Hall. Japp's confidence faltered, and he muttered about checking police records. Hastings, meanwhile, had overheard a heated exchange in the garden earlier that day. Clara Ashbourne, her voice sharp with accusation, had confronted her father, Sir Henry, about his business dealings with Major Whitlock. "You've ruined us, father," she had hissed, her words carrying on the wind. "The Major knew, didn't he? That's why he's dead." Sir Henry's face had darkened, and he had waved her away with a curt, "Mind your tongue, girl." Hastings relayed this to Poirot, who nodded thoughtfully. "The family Ashbourne," he murmured. "They are not so united as they appear." And the Major, he was a threat to more than one. Poirot's attention returned to the blue silk thread he had found in the library. He had confirmed through discreet inquiry with the housemaid that Clara's scarf was indeed missing, last seen at dinner the previous evening. Yet Clara's claim of losing it seemed too glib for Poirot's liking. "A woman like Mademoiselle Clara," he told Hastings, "she does not misplace such a fine accessory without purpose." He tucked the thread back into his pocket, his expression inscrutable. As the household gathered for a somber tea, Violet Whitlock's red-rimmed eyes drew pity but also scrutiny. Mrs. Carver, ever the observer, leaned toward Hastings and whispered, "She plays the grieving widow well, but her tears are too perfect, don't you think?" Hastings, unsettled, glanced at Poirot, who was watching Violet with the intensity of a cat studying a mouse. The room buzzed with unspoken suspicions, each guest casting sidelong glances at the others. Ravenwood Hall, once a haven of civility, now simmered with distrust, and Poirot's calm presence only heightened the tension. "The truth, mon ami," he said softly to Hastings, "it is like a buried treasure. We must dig but carefully, lest we disturb the wrong stone." Chapter 6. The Clue in the Ash. The morning light filtered weakly through the heavy clouds over Ravenwood Hall, casting a pallor over the manor's somber halls. Hercule Poirot, ever meticulous, stood in the library once more, his eyes fixed on the ashtray where the half-burned Turkish cigarette rested. The room, still marked by the faint scent of blood and the storm's damp residue, seemed to hold its breath under his scrutiny. Captain Hastings watched, marveling at Poirot's ability to find significance in the smallest details. "This cigarette," Poirot said, lifting it with a pair of tweezers, "it is an anomaly. Major Whitlock, he smoked Virginia tobacco, yet here we have a Turkish blend, rare in these parts." He sealed the cigarette in a small envelope, announcing his intention to send it to a chemist friend in London for analysis. "The ash, mon ami, it may tell us more than the smoker intended." Hastings nodded, though he wondered what secrets could hide in so mundane an object. Poirot's attention shifted to the windowsill, where the smudge of dry mud still lingered. He crouched, his magnifying glass catching the light as he examined the soil. "This mud," he murmured. "It matches the flower bed beneath the library window, but it was not deposited during the storm. It is too dry, from a day earlier, perhaps." He rose, brushing his gloves, and pointed to the trellis outside. "Someone climbed, entered, or left this way. The question is who?" A new clue caught his eye. A tiny shard of glass, barely visible, nestled in the rug near the desk. Poirot picked it up with care, holding it to the light. "This is not from a window or a tumbler," he said. "It is from a vial, perhaps one used for a sedative or poison." His eyes gleamed with the thrill of discovery. "We must consider, Hastings, what such a vial contained, and who administered it." Poirot summoned the housemaid, who confirmed that Dr. Philip Grayson had visited the library the previous evening, claiming he wished to borrow a medical journal. "He was there for some time, sir," she said, her voice hesitant. Poirot thanked her, his mind clearly racing. "The doctor, he is nervous, always twitching." "Why does he visit the library at such an hour?" he asked Hastings, who had no answer but felt the weight of the question. Outside, Poirot examined the flower bed beneath the window, noting scuff marks on the trellis and a faint imprint in the soil. "Someone stood here," he said. "But they were careful. Very careful." He sketched the scene in his notebook, marking the window's position relative to the garden path. Hastings, watching, felt the familiar stir of excitement. Poirot was building his mosaic piece by meticulous piece. As they returned to the house, Poirot paused by the fireplace in the hall, where a faint trace of ash caught his eye. "More ash," he said, collecting it. "Perhaps it is nothing but the little gray cells. They insist on order." He turned to Hastings, his expression grave. "The Major's death. It is no simple suicide. There is a hand behind this, one that thinks itself clever. But Hercule Poirot, he is more clever still." The household, unaware of Poirot's findings, moved through the morning with strained civility. Violet Whitlock's tearful demeanor drew whispers, while Clara's sharp glances suggested she knew more than she let on. Sir Henry, red-faced and blustering, avoided Poirot's gaze. The library, with its silent clues, held the key to the truth, and Poirot was determined to unlock it. Chapter 7. Secrets and Scandals. The atmosphere in Ravenwood Hall had grown thick with suspicion, as if the very walls absorbed the secrets of its inhabitants. Hercule Poirot, seated in the morning room with a cup of tisane, reviewed his notes, his precise handwriting mapping the web of motives and lies. Captain Hastings, standing by the window, watched the guests drift through the manor like actors in a tense play, their polite facades fraying under the strain of the investigation. Poirot's morning inquiries had unearthed a tangle of hidden motives. He had learned from a discreet conversation with the butler that Sir Henry Ashbourne and Major Whitlock had been partners in a speculative venture, an investment in a failing shipping company that collapsed months ago, leaving Sir Henry on the brink of financial ruin. The butler, hesitant but loyal to the truth, revealed that Sir Henry had been seen arguing with the Major in the library a week prior, their voices raised over debts and betrayal. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Money, mon ami," he told Hastings. "It is a motive as old as time, and it drives men to desperate acts." Clara Ashbourne, meanwhile, had not escaped Poirot's notice. Hastings had overheard her in the garden again, this time confronting her father with barely concealed fury. "You let him ruin us, father, and now he's dead. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" Her words, sharp as a blade, lingered in Hastings' mind. When he reported this to Poirot, the detective nodded slowly. "Mademoiselle Clara, she is no mere observer. She knows more than she says, and her anger, it is a clue in itself." Mrs. Evelyn Carver, ever the novelist, had taken to dropping cryptic hints during tea. Leaning toward Lady Margaret, she murmured, "Secrets have a way of surfacing, don't they? Like that affair Violet had. Oh, but I shouldn't say." Her words, meant to provoke, drew a gasp from Lady Margaret and a flush from Violet, who excused herself abruptly. Poirot, overhearing, later questioned Mrs. Carver privately. She admitted to working on a manuscript that detailed local scandals, including rumors of Violet's infidelity with an unnamed man. "Fiction, of course," she said with a sly smile, but Poirot's gaze unnerved her. "Fiction, madame, often hides the truth in plain sight," he replied. The most revealing moment came when Poirot cornered Mr. Leonard Baxter, the solicitor, in the study. Under Poirot's gentle but relentless questioning, Baxter admitted to altering Major Whitlock's will at Sir Henry's urging. It was legal, he insisted, his hands trembling as he adjusted his spectacles. The Major agreed to reduce Clara's inheritance in favor of Violet. It was a business matter, nothing more. Poirot's smile was cold. "A business matter, monsieur, that benefits one and harms another. Did the Major suspect your loyalty?" Baxter paled, saying nothing, but his silence spoke volumes. As the afternoon waned, Poirot confided in Hastings. The threads, they begin to connect. Sir Henry's debts, Clara's anger, Violet's secrets, Baxter's alterations, each is a piece of the puzzle. But the vial of glass, the mud, the cigarette, they point to a plan, not an impulse. Hastings, caught up in the complexity, asked, "Do you think it's murder, Poirot?" The detective's eyes twinkled. "Mais oui, mon ami. The Major did not take his own life. Someone in this house ensured he would not see another dawn." The manor's grandeur felt increasingly oppressive, its corridors echoing with unspoken accusations. Poirot, undeterred, continued his methodical pursuit, his little gray cells piecing together the mosaic of deceit. Hastings, watching his friend, felt a familiar awe. Poirot was closing in, and the truth, however well hidden, could not elude him for long. Chapter 8. The Crack in the Facade. The dining room of Ravenwood Hall, lit by the soft glow of candles, hummed with a tension that no amount of claret could dispel. The guests, seated around the polished mahogany table, picked at their food in near silence, each glance laden with suspicion. Hercule Poirot, seated at one end, observed the scene with the calm detachment of a scientist studying a volatile experiment. Captain Hastings, opposite him, felt the weight of the unspoken, as if the air itself carried the secrets of Major Whitlock's death. The evening took a dramatic turn when Violet Whitlock, her face pale and her hands trembling, dropped her wine-glass. It shattered on the floor, drawing gasps. "I can't bear it," she cried, her voice breaking. "Everyone thinks I killed him. Ernest was cruel sometimes, yes, but I loved him. I could never—" Her words dissolved into sobs, and she pressed her handkerchief to her face. Clara Ashbourne, seated across from her, scoffed audibly. "You played the devoted wife poorly, Violet. Those tears won't fool everyone." The room froze, the accusation hanging like a guillotine. Poirot's eyes, sharp and unyielding, darted between the two women. "Mademoiselle Clara," he said softly. Such words. They cut deeply. "What do you know of Madame Whitlock's devotion?" Clara's lips tightened, but she said nothing, her gaze dropping to her plate. Lady Margaret, ever the peacemaker, attempted to change the subject, but the damage was done. The facade of civility had cracked, and Poirot seized the moment. Later, in the privacy of the morning room, Poirot spoke with Violet alone. Her tears had dried, but her hands still shook. "Madame," he said gently, "you spoke of your husband's cruelty. Tell me, if you please, what passed between you." Violet hesitated, then admitted that Major Whitlock had been prone to fits of temper, especially after his business ventures soured. "He suspected me of being unfaithful," she whispered, "but it wasn't true. I met Dr. Grayson in the garden the night before, yes, but only to ask for a sleeping draught, I swear it." Poirot's expression remained neutral, but Hastings, standing by the door, noted the flicker of interest in his friend's eyes. Poirot then sought out Dr. Philip Grayson, whose nervous tic had worsened under the strain. In the library, Poirot's questions were relentless yet polite. "Doctor, you provided Madame Whitlock with sedatives, oui? And you were in this very room the evening before the Major's death. What did you seek here?" Grayson, sweating, admitted to borrowing a book, but stumbled when Poirot pressed him on the vial shard found near the desk. I don't know anything about a vial," he stammered. "I prescribe sedatives, yes, but nothing more." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The truth, doctor, it is like a patient. It requires careful examination." As the evening drew to a close, Poirot confided in Hastings. "The crack, mon ami, it has appeared. Violet's tears, Clara's accusation, Grayson's nerves, they reveal the human heart under pressure. But we must not be swayed by emotion alone. The clues, the mud, the cigarette, the glass, they tell a story of calculation. Hastings, catching Poirot's intensity, asked, "Do you know who did it?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "The picture it forms, but it is not yet complete. We must wait for the next act." The household retired, their footsteps heavy with dread. Ravenwood Hall, once a bastion of refinement, now felt like a cage, its occupants trapped by their own secrets and Poirot's unyielding pursuit of the truth. Chapter 9. The trap is set. The library of Ravenwood Hall, its air heavy with the lingering scent of tragedy, was once again the stage for Hercule Poirot's meticulous drama. The guests, summoned by his polite but insistent request, gathered in a semicircle of unease, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of the chandelier. Captain Hastings stood by the door, his pulse quickening as he sensed the moment of reckoning drawing near. Poirot, standing before the fireplace, his small frame radiating authority, surveyed the room with eyes that missed nothing. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot began, his voice a velvet blade, "a crime has been committed in this house, and it is not the simple suicide it appears. Major Ernest Whitlock was murdered, and the murderer stands among us." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Sir Henry blustered, his mustache quivering. Lady Margaret clutched her shawl, her eyes darting to Clara, who sat rigid, her face a mask of defiance. Violet Whitlock's hands trembled while Dr. Grayson's tic betrayed his nerves. Mrs. Carver leaned forward, her novelist's curiosity piqued, and Mr. Baxter's impassive facade faltered for a moment. Poirot paced slowly, his cane tapping the floor. "Let us consider the scene," he said. "A locked door, a revolver by the hand, a window open to the storm. But there are details that speak louder than the gunshot. The mud on the sill, dry from a day before the storm. The Turkish cigarette, alien to the Major's habits. The shard of glass from a vial of sedative, and this." He produced the blue silk thread, holding it aloft like a talisman. "A thread from Mademoiselle Clara's scarf, found in this very room." Clara stood, her eyes blazing. "You accuse me, Monsieur Poirot?" "That scarf was lost, as I told you." Her voice was sharp, but Poirot's smile was serene. "Not yet, mademoiselle. I accuse no one, yet. But the scarf, it speaks. And the vial, it whispers of a plan." He turned to the group, his gaze sweeping over them. "Someone entered this room through the window using the trellis. Someone administered a sedative to the Major, rendering him helpless, and someone fired the fatal shot, then arranged the scene to suggest suicide." Inspector Japp, standing near Hastings, muttered, "Sounds like a lot of trouble for a murder." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Précisément, Inspector. It is a crime of calculation, of psychology. The murderer believed themselves clever, but they forgot one thing. Hercule Poirot observes all." He paused, letting the silence press against the guests. Violet's handkerchief twisted in her hands, and Dr. Grayson's tic grew frantic. Sir Henry's face reddened, while Baxter's fingers drummed imperceptibly on his knee. Poirot continued, "I have asked myself, who had motive? Sir Henry, ruined by the Major's failed venture. Mademoiselle Clara, wronged by a changed will. Madame Violet, perhaps trapped in a cruel marriage. Dr. Grayson with his sedatives and secrets, even Madame Carver, whose pen might hide a darker intent, and Monsieur Baxter, whose loyalty to the law is questionable." The room bristled with tension, each guest shifting under Poirot's scrutiny. He raised a hand as if to still their thoughts. "Tomorrow I shall reveal the truth. But tonight, I ask you to reflect. The little gray cells, they are close to the answer." As the group dispersed, their footsteps echoing in the silent hall, Hastings caught Poirot's eye. "You've set a trap, haven't you?" he whispered. Poirot's mustache twitched. Oui, mon ami. The guilty they will squirm, and in their squirming they will betray themselves. Ravenwood Hall seemed to hold its breath, its shadows deepening as Poirot's net tightened around the truth. Chapter 10. The Unraveling. The library of Ravenwood Hall, now a theater of truth, was charged with an almost palpable tension. The guests, summoned once more by Hercule Poirot, sat in a tight semicircle, their faces pale under the chandelier's glow. Captain Hastings, positioned near the door, felt his heart race as Poirot stood before the fireplace, his small frame commanding the room like a maestro before an orchestra. The detective's eyes, sharp and unrelenting, swept over the assembly, and his voice, when he spoke, was clear and deliberate. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began. The time for games is over. Major Ernest Whitlock was murdered, and the truth, it has been uncovered by the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Sir Henry shifted uncomfortably. Lady Margaret's hands trembled, and Clara's gaze was steely. Violet Whitlock clutched her handkerchief. Dr. Grayson's tic betrayed his nerves. Mrs. Carver's eyes gleamed with anticipation, and Mr. Baxter sat rigid, his face a mask. Poirot held up the shard of glass found in the library. This vial contained a sedative administered to the Major before his death. It ensured he was helpless, unable to resist. He turned to Dr. Grayson, whose face drained of color. You, doctor, provided sedatives to Madame Violette. You were in this room the evening before alone. The vial, it is yours, n'est-ce pas? Grayson stammered. I prescribed sedatives, yes, but I didn't. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. We shall return to you, doctor. He then pointed to the windowsill. The mud, dry from a day before the storm, tells us someone climbed the trellis, entered or exited through the window. The shot was fired from outside, not inside, as the angle of the wound confirms. The revolver, stolen from a London club, was placed beside the Major to suggest suicide. A clever trick, but not clever enough. He produced the blue silk thread. This, from Mademoiselle Clara's scarf, was meant to mislead. It was planted, to cast suspicion. Clara's eyes flashed, but Poirot continued, turning to Mr. Baxter. The cigarette, Turkish and rare, was yours, Monsieur Baxter. You smoked it in this room that night, did you not? Baxter's composure cracked, his hands clenching. I may have, but that proves nothing. Poirot's smile was cold. It proves you were here when you claimed to be in your study. Chapter 11. The Aftermath. The morning sun broke through the clouds over Ravenwood Hall, casting a pale, cleansing light across the manor's weathered stone. The oppressive weight that had cloaked the house seemed to lift, if only slightly, as the truth of Major Whitlock's murder settled over its inhabitants. In the drawing room, Hercule Poirot sat with a cup of tisane, its delicate aroma a stark contrast to the grim events of the previous night. Captain Hastings, seated across from him, marveled at his friend's calm demeanor, as if unraveling a murder were no more taxing than solving a crossword. Inspector Japp, bustling with official zeal, had overseen the arrest of Mr. Leonard Baxter, who had confessed to the shooting under Poirot's relentless pressure. Sir Henry Ashbourne, implicated as the mastermind, was detained for further questioning, his bluster reduced to sullen silence. The household, though freed from the immediate threat of a hidden killer, moved with the hesitancy of those still reeling from betrayal. Violet Whitlock, her grief now tinged with relief, kept to her room. Clara Ashbourne, her sharp edges softened by the revelation of her father's guilt, sat quietly in the garden, lost in thought. Lady Margaret, pale and fragile, murmured apologies to anyone who would listen, while Dr. Grayson and Mrs. Carver exchanged uneasy glances, their own secrets no longer the focus, but not forgotten. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mustache twitching with satisfaction. Mon ami Hastings, he said, his voice soft yet resonant. The human heart, it is a labyrinth, none. Greed, fear, loyalty, they twist together, leading even good men to dark deeds. He set his cup down with precision. Sir Henry sought to save his fortune, Baxter his reputation. They thought to outwit fate, but they forgot the order and method of Hercule Poirot. Hastings, still piecing together the clues, shook his head in awe. The way you saw through it all, the mud, the cigarette, the scarf thread. It's remarkable, Poirot. How did you know the shot came from outside? Poirot's eyes twinkled. The angle of the wound, mon ami, it was not consistent with a self-inflicted shot. And the mud, dry when it should have been wet, told of a plan made before the storm. The little gray cells, they arrange the facts, and the truth, it emerges. He rose, adjusting his impeccable coat. This case, it reminds us that truth is not found in haste or passion, but in observation, in psychology. The Major, he was not a good man, perhaps, but his death, it was not justice. It was murder. Hastings nodded, struck by the quiet philosophy in Poirot's words. The detective's work was done, and with it the storm within Ravenwood Hall had passed. As Poirot prepared to depart for the train, his suitcase packed with the same meticulous care he applied to his investigations, he cast a final glance at the manor. Ravenwood Hall, it will heal in time, he said, but its scars, they will remain. He boarded the motor car, leaving Hastings to follow, and the manor receded into the distance, its secrets laid bare. Poirot, ever discreet, turned his thoughts to the next puzzle, his little gray cells already eager for a new challenge. Chapter 12. Echoes of Truth. The quiet of Ravenwood Hall, so recently shattered by murder and revelation, had settled into an uneasy calm, like the stillness after a tempest. The grand manor, with its ivy-clad walls and creaking corridors, seemed to exhale as if relieved to be rid of its darkest secrets. Yet for Captain Arthur Hastings, the echoes of the case lingered, stirring a restless curiosity. He found Hercule Poirot in the conservatory, a glass-walled haven filled with wilting ferns, where the detective stood gazing at the moor beyond, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mon ami," Poirot said without turning, sensing Hastings' approach, "you are troubled, no? The case is closed, yet your mind, it wanders." Hastings, caught off guard, admitted, "It's just, there are loose ends, Poirot." Violet's tears, Clara's anger, even Mrs. Carver's hints. Were they all just distractions? Poirot turned, his green eyes sharp but kind. "Not distractions, Hastings. They are the threads of life itself, passion, fear, ambition. They weave the tapestry, but only some lead to the crime." Poirot invited Hastings to sit, and the two men settled on wicker chairs, the faint scent of damp earth mingling with Poirot's cologne. "Let us reflect," Poirot said, his voice measured. "The Major's death, it was no accident of fate. Sir Henry and Baxter, they conspired, driven by greed and fear of exposure. But the others, each played a part in the drama, even if unwitting." He recounted the clues: the dry mud on the sill, proof of a premeditated act; the Turkish cigarette betraying Baxter's presence; the glass shard, evidence of a sedative plot; and the blue silk thread, a deliberate misdirection to implicate Clara. Hastings frowned. But why frame Clara? Was it just to throw us off? Poirot's mustache twitched. Précisément. Sir Henry, he knew his daughter's temper, her resentment over the will. By planting her scarf, he hoped to shift suspicion, perhaps even to control her. A father's betrayal, it is a wound most deep. Hastings nodded, recalling Clara's fierce accusations in the garden, her pain now cast in a new light. Poirot's thoughts turned to Violet Whitlock. Madame Violette, her tears were genuine, yet her secrets, they clouded the truth. Her meeting with Dr. Grayson, it was innocent, but it gave the appearance of guilt. The human heart, it complicates even the simplest motives. He paused, his gaze distant. And Madame Carver, her hints of scandal, they were not evidence, but they stirred the pot, forcing truths to surface. As the afternoon light faded, Poirot rose, adjusting his cuffs with precision. This case, Hastings, it teaches us the danger of assumption. The locked room, the revolver, they were meant to deceive. But the little gray cells, they see beyond the illusion. He smiled faintly. We leave Ravenwood Hall, but its lessons, they remain. Hastings followed Poirot back to the house, where preparations for their departure were underway. The guests, though subdued, began to resume their routines, their lives altered by the shadow of murder. Clara, glimpsed through a window, sat writing a letter, her expression softer but resolute. Violet, in the drawing-room, spoke quietly with Lady Margaret, their heads bent together in shared grief. Ravenwood Hall, for all its scars, would endure, but its inhabitants would carry the weight of this tragedy forever. Chapter 13. Shadows of Motive. The late afternoon cast a golden haze over Ravenwood Hall, softening the manor's stern facade, but doing little to ease the undercurrent of unease that lingered in its halls. Captain Arthur Hastings, his suitcase half-packed, wandered the grounds, his mind still entangled in the intricacies of the case. The arrest of Mr. Baxter and Sir Henry had brought closure, yet questions gnawed at him, details that, while not central to the murder, hinted at deeper currents running through the household. He found Hercule Poirot in the rose garden, inspecting a wilted bloom with the same care he had given the crime scene. "Mon ami," Poirot said, straightening, "you are restless, oui? The case is solved, yet you seek more answers." Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed. "It's the others, Poirot, Violet, Clara, even Dr. Grayson. Their secrets feel unfinished, as if we've only seen part of the picture." Poirot's eyes twinkled with understanding. "The picture, Hastings, it is never complete. Life, it is not so tidy as a puzzle. But come, let us walk, and I shall illuminate the shadows." As they strolled the gravel path, Poirot reflected on the motives that had swirled around Major Whitlock's death. "Consider Madame Violet," he said, his cane tapping rhythmically. Her tears, they were real, but her fear was not only of loss. The Major's temper, his suspicions of her fidelity, they trapped her in a marriage of appearances. Her meeting with Dr. Grayson, though innocent, was a desperate grasp for relief, not love. Hastings recalled Violet's trembling confession, her admission of seeking a sleeping draught. She was a victim, then, in her own way, he said. Poirot nodded. "Oui, but victims, they can obscure the truth with their pain." Clara Ashbourne, Poirot continued, was a study in suppressed rage. Mademoiselle Clara, she knew of her father's financial ruin and the altered will. Her anger was not merely at the Major, but at Sir Henry, who sacrificed her future to save himself. The scarf thread planted by her father was a cruel twist, a betrayal within a betrayal. Hastings pictured Clara's sharp retorts, her defiance masking a deeper wound. "Will she forgive him?" he asked. Poirot's expression was somber. "Forgiveness, it is not so simple, but she is strong, and time it may heal." Dr. Grayson's role, Poirot explained, was less clear but no less telling. "The doctor, he is nervous, always twitching. His sedatives, they were used in the crime, but I believe he was unwitting. A tool, not a mastermind. His fear, it comes from knowing too much, yet not enough." Poirot paused, his gaze fixed on the horizon. And Madame Carver, her hints of scandal, they were not clues but provocations designed to unsettle. She is a writer, mon ami, and writers, they thrive on chaos. They reached the edge of the garden where the moors stretched endlessly before them. Poirot stopped, his voice soft. "This case, Hastings, it shows us the fragility of trust. Sir Henry and Baxter, they betrayed not only the Major, but all who depended on them. Yet each person here, Violet, Clara, Grayson, they too carry their shadows. The little gray cells, they see the crime, but the heart, it sees the cost. As they turned back toward the manor, Hastings felt a quiet respect for Poirot's ability to balance logic with empathy. The case was closed, but its echoes would linger in Ravenwood Hall, a reminder of the delicate threads that bind human motives. The train to London awaited, and with it the promise of new mysteries, but for now, the garden held a moment of peace. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The fading light of dusk bathed Ravenwood Hall in a somber glow, its towers casting long shadows across the moors. The manor, though quiet now, seemed to hum with the residue of its secrets, as if the walls themselves mourned the unraveling of its tragedy. Captain Arthur Hastings, his packing complete, lingered in the drawing-room where Hercule Poirot sat by the fire, his small hands folded neatly over a notebook. The detective's calm presence was a stark contrast to the turmoil that had gripped the household, and Hastings felt a pang of gratitude for his friend's unyielding clarity. "Poirot," Hastings ventured, settling into a chair. "You've solved the murder, but I can't shake the feeling there's more to understand. The people here, Clara, Violet, even Lady Margaret, they're all changed by this. What happens to them now?" Poirot's mustache twitched, and he set his notebook aside, his green eyes reflective in the firelight. "Mon ami, you seek the epilogue, the human story beyond the crime. Very well, let us tie the final threads." Poirot leaned forward, his voice low and measured. The murder of Major Whitlock, it was a crime of greed and fear, orchestrated by Sir Henry and executed by Baxter. But the others, they were not mere bystanders. Each carried a burden, a secret that shaped their actions. He gestured toward the window where Clara Ashbourne could be seen pacing the terrace, her silhouette sharp against the twilight. "Mademoiselle Clara, she is a woman of fire. Her father's betrayal, altering the will, planting her scarf, it has wounded her deeply. Yet I see in her a strength. She will not forgive Sir Henry soon, but she will forge her own path, perhaps in London, far from these moors." He turned his thoughts to Violet Whitlock. "Madame Violet, her grief is real, but it is mixed with relief. The Major's cruelty, his suspicions, they chained her spirit. Now with his fortune hers, she has freedom, but also the weight of judgment. The whispers of an affair with Dr. Grayson, though false, will follow her. She must learn to live with this shadow." Hastings nodded, recalling Violet's tearful collapse, her vulnerability laid bare. "Lady Margaret," Poirot continued, "she is fragile, a woman who hid her fears behind propriety. She knew of her husband's ruin, yet said nothing, hoping to preserve the facade of Ravenwood Hall. Her silence, it enabled Sir Henry's desperation. She will carry this guilt, but she will endure for her daughter's sake." Hastings thought of Lady Margaret's trembling hands, her attempts to smooth over tensions, and saw the truth in Poirot's words. As for Dr. Grayson and Mrs. Carver, Poirot's tone grew wry. "The doctor, he is a man of weakness, not malice. His sedatives were used in the crime, but he was no conspirator. His nerves, they betray a conscience troubled by what he suspected but did not say. Madame Carver, she thrives on secrets, weaving them into her tales. She played no part in the murder, but her provocations stirred the truth to the surface. Both will return to their lives, but not unchanged." Poirot rose, adjusting his coat with precision. "The crime, Hastings, it is solved, but its ripples they spread. The little gray cells, they see the act, but the heart, it sees the cost. Ravenwood Hall, it will stand, but its soul, it is marked by this tragedy." He glanced at the clock. "Our train awaits, mon ami. Let us leave this place to heal." As they stepped into the hall, the manor seemed quieter, its air lighter but still heavy with memory. Hastings followed Poirot, his mind turning over the human toll of the case, and felt a quiet resolve to carry its lessons forward. Chapter 15. The Departure. The morning air was crisp as the motor car idled outside Ravenwood Hall, its engine a soft hum against the vast silence of the Devon moors. Captain Arthur Hastings stood by the vehicle, his suitcase at his feet, watching as Hercule Poirot emerged from the manor, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache perfectly waxed. The detective's small frame carried an air of quiet triumph, as if the resolution of Major Whitlock's murder had restored a semblance of order to the world. The manor, its ivy-clad walls bathed in pale sunlight, seemed to watch their departure with a weary resignation. "Mon ami," Poirot said, adjusting his hat with a precise flick, "you look upon Ravenwood Hall as if it might speak. But its story, it is told, and we must move on." Hastings smiled faintly, his mind still tethered to the events of the past days. "It's hard to leave it behind, Poirot. The people here, Clara, Violet, Lady Margaret, they'll carry this forever." Poirot nodded, his green eyes reflective. "Oui, Hastings. A crime, it leaves scars, not only on the victim, but on all who witness it. Yet life, it continues, and so must we." As they settled into the motor car, Poirot gazed out at the receding manor, his thoughts drifting to the case's intricacies. "This affair," he said, "it was a puzzle of the human heart. Sir Henry and Baxter, they sought to bury their sins. Greed, deceit, desperation. But the clues, the mud, the cigarette, the vial, the silk thread, they betrayed them. The little gray cells, they do not permit such secrets to remain hidden." Hastings, ever the attentive listener, marveled at Poirot's clarity. "You saw it all so clearly, Poirot. The way you pieced it together, it's nothing short of genius." Poirot's mustache twitched with a modest smile. "Genius, perhaps, but it is method, Hastings. The observation of detail, the study of character, these are the tools of truth. The Major's death, it was no accident, no impulse. It was a calculated act, undone by the smallest oversights." He paused, his voice softening. "And yet I pity them. Sir Henry, Baxter, even the Major, each was trapped by their own desires, their own fears. The human condition, it is both the crime and the solution." The car wound through the moorland, the manor shrinking to a speck in the distance. Hastings thought of Clara, her fierce resolve now tempered by betrayal. Of Violet, freed yet haunted by her husband's shadow. Of Lady Margaret clinging to the remnants of her family's dignity. "What will become of them, Poirot?" he asked. Poirot's gaze remained on the horizon. "They will endure, mon ami. Clara will find her strength, Violet her peace, Lady Margaret her purpose. Ravenwood Hall, it will stand, but its heart, it beats differently now." As they neared Ravenwood Station, the train's whistle sounded, a call to the world beyond. Poirot adjusted his gloves, his demeanor serene. "The next adventure, it awaits us, Hastings. The little gray cells, they are ready?" Hastings chuckled, warmed by his friend's unyielding spirit. The motor car stopped, and they stepped onto the platform, leaving Ravenwood Hall and its secrets behind. The train approached, its rhythm steady, carrying them toward London and the promise of new mysteries, while the moors whispered their eternal silence. Poirot paced, weaving the threads together. The Major discovered a betrayal. Monsieur Baxter, you altered his will at Sir Henry's urging, reducing Mademoiselle Clara's inheritance to save Sir Henry from ruin. The Major, he learned of this deceit and threatened to expose you both. So a plan was formed. Sir Henry, you supplied the stolen revolver. Baxter, you sedated the Major with a drink, climbed the trellis, and shot him from outside. You locked the door with a string trick, then planted the scarf thread to implicate Mademoiselle Clara. Sir Henry blustered. Preposterous. But Baxter's resolve shattered. He slumped, his voice hoarse. It was Henry's idea. The Major would have ruined us. I only meant to protect—" He stopped, realizing his confession. Japp, standing by, signaled to his constables, who moved toward Baxter. Poirot's voice softened. "The human heart, it seeks to protect, but in doing so it destroys. You, Monsieur Baxter, and you, Sir Henry, thought to outwit justice. But the little gray cells, they see all." The room was silent, save for Violet's soft sob and Clara's sharp intake of breath. The truth, so carefully hidden, lay bare at last.